What's good, friends list? Episode 29 of the Gamecast coming at you. With Sony now confirmed to skip E3 for a second year in a row, a big question remains. What's the message from Microsoft? So, this week, we dive into how Microsoft should position the next generation of Xbox moving throughout the year, and more importantly, the messaging regarding it, with its biggest competitor once again opting out of one of the biggest gaming press events of the year. We're diving deep on another new episode of the Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Budget.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. New episodes of the show drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show and video games alike, along with our giveaways that we're running, which we will talk to you about in a little bit. As always, back together again, the trio in action here. Duo, including me. Well, trio, including me, I guess it is. I don't know, whatever. There's fucking three of us. As always, joining me are my partners in crime, Mike Peapack and Adam Marshy Marsh. Mike, talk to me about what's going on. You just got back from a trip, so you obviously didn't play a lot of video games, but talk to me about this trip. Where did you go? What all did you do? And how was everything?
So I went on a trip to Denver, Colorado, and primary reason was Friday night the Penguins played in Denver against the Colorado Avalanche, and it was an exciting game. It went to overtime, so back and forth, really entertaining game. Physical, but clean physical. No, not a lot of carrying on or shenanigans. It was pretty much just like there were hard body checks, but everyone that got body checked pretty much saw the opponent coming, so it wasn't like blindside hits or anything crazy. So it was really entertaining. The players kept the chippiness to a minimum. Hornquist mixes it up like always, but that's just him. And from there, Thursday we checked out Estes Park and a little bit of Rocky Mountain National Park and Roosevelt National Forest. And it was running out of daylight because that's the day we flew in was Thursday. So we didn't get to check out too much, but we did get to see the hotel from The Shining. So that was really cool. I just stumbled upon it.
I was going to say, that's pretty dope.
I remembered it was called the Stanley, and then I saw that I passed the Stanley, and I was like, wait a minute. Because I remember when we were planning on the trip, I looked up to see where it was, and I was like, holy shit, that's pretty cool, but it's pretty far away from Denver. But we wound up getting it in, so that was Thursday. Friday, we went to Red Rocks out in...
how was that, checking that out?
Yeah, it was incredible. We were it's like 35-40 minutes west of Denver. It's kind of like Burgettstown to Pittsburgh in a way.
Yeah,
it's just so much better. It's just incredible, seeing the stage down there and then the rocks that kind of create the acoustics and everything, and it's just one big amphitheater. And in the distance you can see Denver, and it's pretty interesting when you're on the Rocky Mountains and you look back towards Denver, back towards the Midwest. You can just see forever, and then you see these huge snow-capped mountains on the other side. So it was really an incredible time. They had a nice little Colorado Music Hall of Fame thing put up, and then they had these plaques where it had the years and everyone that's ever played at Red Rocks during that year. So I saw a couple cool artists that no longer are with us that had played at Red Rocks, and they would have been really awesome to see. Tom Petty being one of them. The Eagles. I don't think the Eagles ever played Red Rocks, but I'd have to double check. And then Mac Miller played there in 15 and 16, so that would have been a cool show to check out. But
for sure.
I definitely need to get out there and see a show. Saturday, we went to Colorado Springs. We passed the Air Force Academy. We saw some students doing some paratrooper dives. So that was, or paratrooper flights. So that was pretty cool. Seeing guys, fly out of an airplane was pretty sweet. And then we did another hike. And then we checked out this place called the Front Range Barbecue, which is another situation where we just kind of stumbled upon it. And it happened to be on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. And I had the sandwich that was on
with base god Guy Fieri.
With Guy Fieri. The sandwich I had was a pulled pork sandwich with kibasi, cheddar cheese, coleslaw, onion rings, and pickles. And I picked pickles because I'm not a pickle guy. But let me tell you, it was an interesting sandwich to say the least. And then I had a side of mashed potatoes. The restaurant was amazing, and it was just a really great trip. I'm really happy that we got out there, and I definitely want to consider relocating there at some point in time in my life. I would think it's just so much fun out there,
Oh
and there's
yeah.
just hikes for days. You can literally go anywhere. An hour if you live near Denver,
Hmm.
within an hour you can hike in so many different spots that I think it would take you years to do all the trails.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, that's great, man. I mean, I'm glad the trip went good. Nice little getaway for a couple of days at least, and you know, now back to the grind, I guess. But hell, you leave again in a couple weeks here to go out to where? Vegas to do a little golfing?
Yeah, so we have a Vegas trip planned. We usually go on a golf trip in March to North Carolina to the Pinehurst region, but
Hmm.
two of the members of the group that we go with are actually expecting in April, so their wives wouldn't okay that. But we did go ahead and get a trip to Vegas planned. So I'll be flying out on the 31st, and then I'll be there until the 4th of February. I'll be in Vegas golfing that weekend, so it'll be fun. And we didn't know, it was just kind of like that's the weekend we picked. One
Hmm.
of the reasons why it might be so expensive to fly out there, and again, it was like $488 to sign up for a Southwest credit card. I got a $200 credit, whatever. Like I just got the Southwest credit card because I'm going to be flying a lot, and that's the weekend of the Super Bowl. So
Hmm.
we'll bet on the game and we'll go to a sports bar and we'll watch it and just have a blast with it. So I'm really excited for that trip too.
Nice, nice. Well, let's kick it over to our other co-host here, Adam Marshy Marsh. Now, you and I have been playing some video games, unlike Mike. Mike's out there doing like social shit, and we're
He's
just
out there in meat space.
yeah, I know what the fuck.
I'm doing
Like,
hikes and doing athletic
yeah,
things.
like
and you guys
he's
are
out
just
there
chilling.
doing fucking nerd shit while we're trying to do real man stuff, aka play video games and stay inside and not fucking socialize with anyone. No, in all seriousness, no. Adam, pick me up on what's going on. What's good? What's going on? And what have you been playing since you didn't go to fucking Colorado like some people?
I've been doing pretty good. I've been bouncing around between just continuing to play Reach on the Halo Master Chief Collection. I'm on PC. I've been replaying some Divinity Original Sin 2.
Nice.
I
PC, I'm guessing, correct?
also on PC. Yep. I played it once originally when the game first came out. Beat that game, and then they released the definitive edition, and so I'm just going on my first time through on that version of the game. I'm almost done.
Nice. Nice.
I've also been playing some Tabletop Simulator with some of my friends in Discord, playing games like Bang and Betrayal at House on the Hill. Those are both pretty fun.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully we're going to try to mix it up with that soon, three of us on the show.
Definitely.
And I feel like I'm missing something.
I wonder how taxing the game is on a computer because it almost feels like you should be able to run it on your MacBook, Travis, and like you could even play it from Molly's or something, or you both could play, or I don't know.
I'm sure I
like
could.
that would be able to
I'm
work.
sure I could play it on my work laptop since my MacBook is like RIP right now. I could easily play it on my work MacBook. I mean,
I'm pretty sure it's pretty low spec.
Yeah, it for sure. I mean, hell, that thing's ran a couple. I've even just tried like test betting a couple different games on there that probably shouldn't run on there, and they run fine. So.
Nice.
Yeah, so we could probably do something like that. I was thinking of even doing, eventually maybe down the road, possibly incorporating like a game night into, either with listeners or whoever, something like that. I think that's, board games are always such a easy. They're so easy to translate to so many people, just because they kind of bridge a lot of different gamer types, if you want to say, like. Because gamer is such a blanket word that does include people who do play board games and any games of any facet, mobile games, whatever, so they're just so easy to translate to so many different groups of people. So I'm definitely down to play more and hell, even bring some more people onto it. So, but on my end, just like I said, I've been pretty much kind of. Right now, it's kind of at a standstill with a lot of stuff that I'm playing. I jumped back into Death Stranding. Obviously, this is an Xbox show. I'm not going to harp on that too long. But that's finally kind of clicked again for me, and I'd like to see that through. With which we'll talk about, coming up on some of the news. Now with a few games getting delayed and whatnot, things have been kind of pushed back, and there's like this kind of month and a half holding period of stuff. That's pretty much, well, realistically, the first big game that's coming up soon that I definitely am picking up day one is really like 2 months out. So it's now time where I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to have time to kind of go back and play a lot of backlog games and things like that. So right now it's kind of finishing up with Death Stranding, but in terms of an Xbox audience, my fiance and I are now on the final season of Telltale's The Walking Dead, and really, I guess, Skybound's Walking Dead too. So we're only an episode into it, and traditionally they're 5-episode seasons. This one is 4, but the episodes are pretty beefy. But I'll tell you what, man, the ending of that first episode is a roller coaster, to say the least. Obviously don't want to talk about it too much because it is relatively a newer series that only wrapped up not even a year ago. So, but man, if that's any indication of how the rest of the season's going to go, I am all in. Cannot wait to play more. I'm hoping we play more tonight. She's really into it too, and I talk about it all the time. Telltale games are so... It's almost like the board game type thing where they're so transferable between so many audiences that it really lends that almost like the Jackbox style, or really a choose your own adventure game that is so easy that anybody could pick up and play with you. It feeds into that, hey, there's 4 people sitting on a couch together, let's just pass the controller around, or like in our case, I do all the QTEs and all the like button inputs. She does all the choices. I let her make the choices unless they're like super big ones and we'll talk them out or whatever. But really excited to get into more of that. But before we jump into our news, let's kick into some housekeeping. It's our free game giveaway. Do you like free games? Obviously, unless you're some kind of fucking psychopath, free shit's awesome. Except like crack, I guess. You know, you don't want to take free crack. Anyways, let us hook you up with some free games. We're giving away a brand new free game of your choice on any console to one lucky listener. All you have to do is follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast, retweet the pin tweet on our profile, and make sure you're listening to the show to know if you won. That's it. And guess what? The timer's on, because we now have a date that we're fucking pulling a winner. Now listen, if you're listening to the show, because that's the thing, I'm not gonna fucking like just blast it out online or whatever. We gotta reel you in. This is behind the scenes inside baseball shit. You gotta listen to this fucking show so we get you in here and, you know, you are serenaded and hell even seduced with some of our voices, you know what I'm saying? But we're gonna be pulling a winner for that on Friday, January 24th. Not this show, obviously, but you got 1 week from when this show goes live to make sure you're following us, retweet that tweet that we're talking about, the pinned one on our profile, and you're entered. That's it. And we're going to pull a winner, announce it on the show next week. So make sure you're listening, because you got to listen to the show. I ain't no freeloaders here. I mean, technically I'm giving you a free game. Just listen to the fucking show and you might win a free game. So, anyways, just do it, damn it. Anyways, let's jump into the news, guys, here. We got a couple news stories, nothing too major, but, you know, definitely kind of tables and sets up our big topic that we're going to kind of talk about today. So, let's jump into it. First one here. Xbox Game Studios is now in quote-unquote execution mode, but is still acquiring, says Phil Spencer. This comes by Stephen Wright over at Stevivor. Starts out, while Xbox Game Studios is largely in quote-unquote execution mode, developing new games for the likes of Xbox Series X, Phil Spencer told Stevivor that it still has gaps and the need for quote-unquote new points of view. At E3 2018, Spencer confirmed that Xbox Game Studios had acquired Ninja Theory, developer of Hellblade, Compulsion Games, developer of We Happy Few, Undead Labs, developer of State of Decay 1 and 2, and Playground Games' Forza Horizon series, in addition to the formation of a new studio called The Initiative. And if you aren't familiar with The Initiative, listen to last week's show, and Mike and I talk all about that and what the fuck they may be up to. So a little plug there. Anyways, this was followed up by the acquisition of Obsidian, developer of The Outer Worlds, and In Exile Entertainment, developer of the upcoming Wasteland 3, later that same year. While Spencer is pleased with the Xbox Game Studios' growth, he still says there's room for improvement. Quote, "We're always open," Spencer said, when asked if he still was interested in acquiring new developers. Quote, "I like the geographic diversity that we've been growing with our studios. If you look at Asia, we don't have any first-party studios in Asia. I think that's an opportunity for us. We've moved from acquisition mode to execution mode," Spencer continued. "We are sitting here with 15-plus studios working on games, but it's not about a logo parade or look at what we acquired this week, but really about what games the studios are going to build. I don't think that a strong, growing first party is definitely part of our strategy, he concluded. I'd love to see us continue to get new storytellers with points of view into our first party portfolio. So, with Microsoft now kind of having a pretty diverse set of first-party studios, we're now getting to the point that we're going to begin to see the fruits of these acquisition labors start to kind of take form here, especially with next-gen just basically knocking down the door at this point coming in the fall. So, at the same time, though, I do believe it can be more diverse with its studios, and, experience should never stop in terms of that search. So, I want to just kind of ask the question with this as we kind of talk about this topic. Where is one market you would like to see Microsoft tap into in terms of its gaming divisions? And I think Phil makes kind of a great point. The obvious one, Asia, is a big one. You rarely see JRPGs found on, traditional Xbox consoles, and they've struggled in the past with Asian markets, specifically Japan. So, what do you guys think? Where do you want to see, what kind of diverse studios are you looking forward with Xbox Game Studios if they do expand? And what kind of diverse experiences do you want to see them add to their portfolio?
I think if I know Adam will be a little bit behind on this just for the fact that he, wasn't here last week. So we talked about this briefly last week. But my biggest thing with what we're looking for from Xbox is kind of like with the initiative and the Quad A conversation that we had last week is we need better RPGs and we need more, story-driven games. We need games that rival the likes of, and I'm not saying like you have to be a clone or anything of that nature, but, games that PlayStation are knocking out of the park. Those are the type of games that Xbox needs to focus on producing because, in all honesty, that's what's going to bring people back to your console. We've talked about it at length on this podcast, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future about, what can Xbox really do in the next generation in order to kind of put themselves into the successful and potentially even leapfrog Sony. And I don't know that it's possible, but we need them to, to produce games that rival the God of Wars or rival your The Last of Us and rival, whether it be even Horizon Zero Dawn, very successful PlayStation game, unique. Xbox just doesn't have very many experiences like that for them. And I think, the initiative and there's other devs inside of the Xbox, under the umbrella that are going to produce quality games, and that's what we need. We need games that are RPG driven, and we need games that are storyline driven to rival PlayStation because they have the shooters down. Halo Infinite's coming. They're going to have a new Gears of War. The shooters they still have. I mean, Halo's been on a shaky ground. Gears, meh. I mean, campaign's been great. Multiplayer's maybe left something to be desired. But they really need to do a great job at knocking out RPGs in this next generation. And I think they're setting themselves up to do it. If you guys haven't listened, go ahead and drop back to the last podcast about the initiative. Me and Travis go at length on how we think that, what Xbox is doing to put themselves in the best situation with the initiative going forward. And I think they're going to produce something special, but it can't just be a one-man show because PlayStation doesn't have just one game. I've named 3 very successful RPG games, and I haven't even named Uncharted. So they have, Xbox has a lot to do to catch up. And I don't know that they should really focus on catching up. They should focus on blazing their own trail. But it ultimately stems from, those storyline-driven games that we've talked about that they're lacking over all our episodes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Adam, what do you think, man?
It's tough to build on what's already been said. Like, we've talked before about how Sony covers a big share of RPGs, and that makes them more appealing in East Asia, specifically Japan, just capturing a market that the Xbox really isn't even competing in. So that's one thing I think they could expand more into. I guess what I've been thinking is that Microsoft doesn't have a whole lot of first-party games, or games that are closely associated with Xbox, at least, that just, have a lot of heart, you have... I think there's a lot of heart in the stories in I mean, even Halo and Gears, they have some heart there, but I don't know. I guess it's just the kind of story you tell in different kinds of games that might be about more than just, adversity and conquest, or about triumph or dominating your enemies. Like something, I don't know, maybe just more like human. I feel like I don't have a strong connection to a very human story in something from a Microsoft property, something very down to earth. I don't know, even just like not even going for kiddie games. It's hard to articulate what I'm going for here.
No, I get what you're saying. It is hard to kind of build off of that and, kind of really think because realistically, looking at it right now, they have a ton of bases covered. I mean, we truly don't know what the initiative is doing, but we have a pretty good sense of, like we keep saying, last week's podcast really touched on a lot of that. But they're building, from what it seems like, towards a, big cinematic single player experience, or at least traditionally that's what they've been hiring for is that. But, outside of that, it really to me is that Japanese market, specifically within Asia, with JRPGs not necessarily finding a home for a long time on Xbox consoles and Microsoft hardware, but we are seeing that with what's the big shooter that's coming to Xbox? Crossfire X, that's it. This huge game that, like, I had no idea the shooter was that big overseas, that there's 650 million registered players on this within the Asian market alone, specifically in South Korea, that them getting a major title like this is pretty huge to begin with. It was announced at E3 last year, but I think we're now going to see, at least with the diversity that is coming with Xbox, I wouldn't be shocked if we see more JRPGs or the like come to Xbox and at least dip that toe in the water, because I think, to be honest, outside of, the few Final Fantasy titles that were brought over to Xbox 360, really, and we have Final Fantasy 15, and I know they're trying to get 14 on here onto Xbox consoles as well, but last that like really stick out to me, really, that were like homegrown JRPGs specifically for an Xbox console, was like Blue Dragon back on 360. So like, it's and there may be more between that, but like the fact that you really have to dig to look, compared to, you look at Nintendo, you look at Sony, and it's like kind of close your eyes and throw a dart and there's a 50% chance you could pull one. So it would be exciting to see that, because I would like to get into more JRPGs, to be honest. So being able to have them readily available on all platforms comparative to just PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC would be nice. So let's move into our next one here, and this will be more. We'll talk about this a little bit deeper on our big topic, but, just kind of touching just the brief story of it. Xbox has confirmed they will be at E3 2020. Phil Spencer has confirmed this. This write-up comes from Heather Wade over at Games Radar. As always, all these links will be in the description of the show. You can go over there, click them, make sure everybody gets a nice little click over there. So, head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, has confirmed Xbox will be attending E3 2020. Spencer took to Twitter to confirm the news, saying, quote, "Our team is hard at work on E3, and we look forward to sharing with all who love to play what's ahead for us. Our art form has consistently been propelled by the cross-section of creativity and technical progress. 2020 is a milestone year in that journey for Team Xbox." The confirmation comes just after Sony announcing it would be skipping the event for a second year in a row. After the E3 2019 doxing scandal that saw thousands of journalists' private information leaked online and Sony's absence from the event, many have been discussing the decline of the big industry trade show. 2020 is a big year for both Sony and Microsoft, with the next-gen consoles on the horizon. Sony will likely hold its own event for the PS5, with rumors already circulating that we may see the PS5 revealed in February. So while we'll kind of dive more into this later in the show in our big topic regarding, really messaging and whatnot, it seems as though E3 is just on borrowed time at this point, at least in its current form, as first and foremost being viewed as a press event and a press and media focused event. Do you guys see E3 in its current form surviving next gen, this next console generation that we're seeing, or do they fully embrace the fan focused aspects of it that you now see being open to the public, a la a PAX East, West, South, whatever? What do you guys think?
I mean, opening your doors is definitely a step in the right direction when you see, like, the vendors bleeding away from the event.
Mm-hmm.
With Sony leaving, there's going to be less to draw people in if there's already a high barrier to entry. So, like, if you lower that barrier, hopefully it'll be able to stay healthy as an expo.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's one of those things. It's such a weird subject because and it's hard to not talk about with like a jaded view, because like, or I should say like a what do I want to say? What's the fucking word I'm thinking of? Like I'm showing favoritism towards E3 when I say this, I guess, because like I do have a soft spot. Words, they're hard. Soft spot in my heart for E3. Just so many memories, either growing up watching, all different kinds of press conferences. I always remember seeing the Master Chief Collection being rumored for so long and then getting announced at the, E3 press conference. Hell, Sony's press conference in 2013, whenever they did the whole, here's how you trade games with your friends. And it's just them handing it off after Xbox saying, like, you won't be able to do pre-owned games, like, at first. And then they backtracked off of that and whatnot. Or clarified, I should say. But, we live in a different industry than in a different world within gaming. And, we'll kind of touch on this a little bit later, like I said. But, that was 7 years ago. Where now we're talking in 2020, all three major hardware manufacturers have their own form of communicating digitally with their fans, with Nintendo having its Nintendo Directs and having those for, almost a decade at this point, but having those, Sony now having its own state of play, which is very Nintendo Direct-esque, and Microsoft now having its similar answer to that with almost a magazine-esque show inside Xbox, where they can all control the messaging with that. So I don't think it's a bad thing to open the doors to more fans, because E3 I think will always be around in some fashion. They may rebrand it to be more of a PAX, but a PAX on steroids, where there is more focus on the fan and not, I'm sure the Xboxes and Nintendos and hell, if Sony ever comes back to the E3, if it is in that fashion, it'll be more of a, hey, here's our state of play for that, or hey, here's our Nintendo Direct, kind of like what Nintendo does already. But I think we'll see more of that compared to actual, here's a mega press conference, here's our big press event of the year, where messages are so controlled throughout the year. Mike, do you have anything to kind of touch on that? I know I kind of rambled for a few seconds there, but...
No, you're good. Don't worry about it. I think it's kind of a sad state of affairs.
It is. It is.
It makes a lot of sense for the company that is, it makes a lot of sense for the company of Sony to make the move or the switch, if you will, that they're making on the, on the E3. But I feel like kind of sad, because it does seem like it's a changing of the guard. It does seem like most of these companies are going to begin to take matters into their own hands and have their own shows that they can control. It's on their own date, and they can have complete and total control of the press. They can have complete and total control of everything that they show. But again, I think you made valid points that it seems like E3 is making a little bit of a change to make it more, public friendly. You can go and bypass E3 and go see what's coming out. I think it's it's weird. It's another feeling like they're trying to corner the market into their own little thing, and they're not really, I don't know that they're playing like I don't know that they're playing like dirty, if you will, but it definitely feels like they're trying to flex a muscle and say like, we don't really need E3. Sony's big enough on their own. Why bother going to E3? I have respect for the companies that still go ahead and go to E3 and put the time in and put the effort in to share their games in that way. But I definitely agree with both of your guys' sentiments. It feels like E3 kind of on the way out, and it's a sad day when it will end. I hope it doesn't. I hope there's a resurgence, and we'll see what happens with the next gen. But it definitely does seem like it's in dire straits right now.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Like I said, we'll kind of touch more on that when we get into our big topic. But let's before we do that, let's head into our last news article of the day, and just kind of highlighting one of the bigger Xbox games that are, or I should say, one of the bigger multi-platform games that was delayed. Today announced, we're recording on that Tuesday, that we saw Final Fantasy VII get delayed, but also the new Avengers game by Crystal Dynamics has been delayed until September. This write-up comes via Polygon by Austin Goslin. So Crystal Dynamics announced on Tuesday morning that it's delaying its Marvel's Avengers video game. The game was originally set to come out on May 15th, but now won't be released until September 4th. In the studio's statement on the delay, it explains that the new release date will give the development team more time to bring together its vision of the game. Quote, "We committed to delivering an original story-driven campaign, engaging co-op, and compelling content for years to come," the statement from Crystal Dynamics says. To that end, we will spend the additional development time focusing on fine-tuning and polishing the game to the high standards of our fans expect and deserve. The game's delay doesn't come as a large surprise, especially given the reception to its public showing so far. After the game's reveal trailer at E3 2019, it was immediately met with backlash from fans over the character designs of some of Marvel's most iconic superheroes. While the characters were intended to stay far away from their instantly recognizable Marvel Cinematic Universe counterparts, they instead fell into a strangely uncanny valley that left them looking generic. When players began to get their hands on the game in small behind closed doors demos, the reactions to the game were similarly lukewarm. So, personally, I disagree with Austin's sentiments on how the game has been viewed overall since its initial full reveal at E3 last year. So when it was first shown, yes, many gamers were confused at just what the hell this game is and where does this fit into the overarching Marvel universe and everything that goes along with Marvel. But since then, I've said it a few times, especially on the show, Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics seem to have kind of buttoned down exactly what this game will have what this game for fans will be doing within it, and more importantly, its messaging around it being both a shared world experience and single player experience, a story driven single player experience. What I do think is kind of unfair is this comparison between this experience and Marvel's Cinematic Universe. Like, there's multiple iterations of the same property that can exist, especially when they're in two completely different entertainment formats, being gaming and movies, TV, whatever. The source material does it consistently and constantly all the time, and you never really hear anything from that. Comics all the time do offshoots, and DC with their Black Label series, and there's multiple different comic runs of iterations of Captain America and Marvel and Spider-Man for sure. The Ultimate line with different Marvel characters, but you rarely heard it regarding like the Dark Knight trilogy and the Batman Arkham series. Nobody did that, and the games were fine. The games were heralded, and it was okay that they were different. Do you guys think it is an unfair comparison, or did Marvel kind of hurt itself by revealing this project so closely to the release of Endgame that it kind of suffocated the game?
I think this is definitely an interesting point and an interesting thing to kind of think about and kind of chew on. Because, something for the first time in forever, I drove past the local movie theater when I was going to the gym the one day when that movie first came out, and for the first time in forever, the parking lot was completely full. Like, you couldn't park anywhere, and I'm talking like behind the theater, in front of the theater, all the way over to Dick's was completely parked. Every single spot was taken, and I thought that was something special, something you hadn't seen in cinematic for a long time. Probably something that a movie like Harry Potter would make you think of, something with such a fan following, and not that Star Wars doesn't come to mind, but something so crazy. Like there's
It
so
was
many
an
crazy
event.
fans about it.
It
Yeah.
was more looked at as an event that even if you weren't a diehard moviegoer or hell, even a diehard Marvel fan, people were just going to see this film because they knew it was just this pop culture event. Like it was a pop culture culmination of all these movies coming together, a 21 or 22 arc movie arc coming together and kind of finishing up. So, it was an event. People looked at it as an event, and that drove people to go there, and you rarely see that anymore.
Right. And for someone who myself is like, I'm not the biggest superhero movie fan. I like the Batman. I like the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. I'm excited to see what they do with Robert Pattinson as Batman, but as far as just straight up like Avengers, things of that nature, I'm not the biggest fan. I did think the two final movies, the 1 and 2, the knockout for the last of the Avengers of this generation were spectacular. I thought Endgame was an incredible film. The editing, everything they did, the storyline, bringing it from the bottom to the top, like front to back, terrific. I do have the same concerns that you've kind of arisen with our topic here. I think Avengers fans that are going to play the game are going to want a specific experience that's going to be close to the cinematic experience. I do think that it could be a genuine concern for everyone involved, everyone that's worried about it, because it makes sense. Avengers Endgame was such a big deal. It was such a huge event, like you said, has such a cult following that there is danger that people that buy the game are going to be looking for a similar type storyline, a similar type experience, whatever the case may be. I'm the type of person that I don't really like whenever video games and movies cross paths. For historically speaking, it hasn't been great when it goes video game to movie. Movie to video game is a different thing. We saw the first GoldenEye for N64. While it released 2 years after the movie came out because they couldn't get it done the way they wanted to get it done, Rare did such a phenomenal job, and that game has gone down in the history. Everyone thinks of that game as something special to them. So I think when you go one way and not the other, it's a little bit better. I do think that the studio over there, Crystal Dynamics, is going to have a challenge, and they kind of have to make a decision. And it seems like they're kind of letting everyone know straight up front, hey, it's not going to be what you expect from Avengers because we're doing our own thing. We're committed to doing our own thing for multiple iterations of a game. So we would love it if you would come along with us. And I think that's important because when 343 took over Halo, they released Halo 4 to provide closure for Master Chief, for Cortana, for a lot of different things, or attempt to provide closure for that generation. And even at the end of the game, when the credits rolled, they said, hey, this is our first step in a new journey. We hope you come along with us. And I thought that was cool what they did. And I see a little bit of shades of 343, in Crystal Dynamics. And I'm excited to see I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to give them the leash or the slack in the line that they need to provide the story that they want to provide. And I think it would behoove of everyone else, including Avengers fans, to come into this with a clean palate, eat that oyster cracker when you're doing your wine tasting, come in with a clean palate and be ready for something new, because I think they're going to do something incredible, but you can't be wanting to compare it to movies because it's not going to be like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's unfair. I mean, just hell, look at Marvel Spider-Man on PS4. That game is in no relation to the current slate of Spider-Man movies, Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies. Like, there's no relation to that at all. And it's a good game. I mean, it's developed by a ridiculously talented developer in Insomniac Games. And Crystal Dynamics has proven that they're great with not only gameplay mechanics, but writing and narrative and storytelling as well with their rebooted Tomb Raider series. So, like, to me, it's just, I think Marvel did kind of hurt itself a little bit by saying, hey, we want to capitalize on the current word of mouth and the zeitgeist of Avengers still being hot right now with the movie just wrapping up, a little over a month ago. Let's put this game out there to kind of see if it can ride that wave even more and get a little more mainstream appeal as well, which I understand the allure to that, but at the same time, in situations like this, when you are doing something a little bit different, I could see where there might have been a little bit of a rake in the weeds there that you step on at that time. So it's tough to tell. I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't, though, possibly as well. So I get it. It is what it is, though. I think I still stand pretty positively on this game. I'm really excited to see more of this game and see where they go, especially now that they're showing stuff with Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, being involved and being a main protagonist within this game. I'm really excited to see where it goes, and especially too how it plays into the shared world experience that us three can pick up a controller and play together on this. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Guys, let's get into our big topic this week. And this week I kind of want to focus on strategy and owning a message in the gaming industry, and more specifically with the next generation of systems. So, as we kind of mentioned earlier, Sony will not be attending E3, the once biggest press event in the industry, for a second year in a row. Now, this doesn't necessarily come as a shocker to many following games in general, given their, increased commitment to digital communication, a la their State of Play broadcast like we talked about, and the rumored issues with the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association, who puts on E3. But at the same time, we're talking about a launch of both next-gen consoles coming with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Many fans also thought they could see Sony return to this, cover this event, and cover as many markets as possible, considering E3 still is one of the largest media presences in the industry that, media outlets, influencers, content creators from all over the world come to cover this event. It's not just one entity covering it like you see with an ESPN or whatnot. So today I kind of want to talk about how Xbox should take this news and what their approach could or should be as the year progresses and gets closer to both consoles' fall 2020 releases. So kind of kicking it off here, I want to get both of your opinions on E3 in general. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but where do you think the show now falls in general in terms of importance to all entities in gaming? We're talking console manufacturers, developers, publishers, media, fans, etc. In terms of when you look at E3, where do you see it as importance to the gaming landscape? Where does it stack up when you look at, man, I'm on bated breath waiting for E3 again, like it was, 10, 15 years ago. What do you guys think? Where do you see E3 on the totem pole of importance in gaming right now?
I kind of want to change directions with this question.
Sure.
I know I like the question as posed,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the listeners are going to kind of see a 180 from me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a little confusing, but while we started off the show and we started off our topic by kind of having doom and gloom with the outlook of E3,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's still something to look forward to for gamers every year. I think that there are still good things done inside of this conference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are still good things displayed and done inside of this conference. I think that gamers can get a unique experience in testing that people are always like, oh man, like I'd love to be a video game tester. I'd be the best. And then you look at the hourly rate and you're like, wow, what a thankless job. And it's a horrible job. But a lot of developers will bring betas or alphas or partially done games to this E3 to try to get some, underground networking or some, guerrilla networking, if you will, kind of like, how smaller artists might have street teams where they would go to the town that say, let's just say the artist Tech9 is going to come to Pittsburgh in 3 weeks. Well, their street team would have been here 2 weeks ago, putting up posters,
Mm-hmm.
giving out CDs, like, putting in that footwork.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like, from a gamer's perspective, it's like almost not like an indie publisher's paradise, if you will, because there are major studios there, but you get to get your hands on these games that aren't done yet, that you've only heard about, that you think are coming out, that you know are coming out, and you get to test these games. Like Warcraft 3 Reforged was played at the last year's E3. Halo Reach on PC was played at last year's E3. So there's some big games that get tested at these conventions that gamers can, pay a nice little sum and go out to LA and, experience it firsthand if they really want to. And I think that there is still enough to be said about that. And there's still enough positive being done in E3 that while it is on, while if Xbox were to move away from E3, that's going to be a whole, it's like pillars to a tower, if you will. And with PlayStation leaving, you kicked out one of the pillars. Well, there's still enough there to hold it up. But if more of these game studios see, better results from doing their own thing, you could see more and more of these pegs getting kicked out to where it's going to eventually crumble. So I don't want to say that it's all doom and gloom, but the trajectory it's headed is concerning. But I still think that there's enough positive there that if enough studios or enough companies still buy into this, that it's on the table. It's not dead. It's not on life support yet, but it does need a little care, and it needs a little bit of tender care and some work done to it to get it back to what it once was, or even better than it once was. And that potential is still there, but they are on thin ice, to use another analogy, if you will. I still think they're on thin ice, and they need to be careful and tread lightly with where they go from here.
Adam, what do you think, my man?
I feel like their importance has been diminished, since it's not like the central gathering point for the dissemination of gaming news and announcements for the year. Things have become a bit more distributed, a bit more even across the board, with different companies having their own expos, with other expos not tied to console makers gaining prominence, like PAX. There was one other factor I wanted to mention. Oh, and just segmentation of audiences and getting smaller announcements that are more specific to them. Like, for instance, this Thursday, it'll be yesterday when the show goes out, but there's an announcement for the next Super Smash Brothers character, and that's just a press release that Nintendo is doing. Nintendo had their Direct for Pokemon last week. So you kind of get, in the new landscape, you kind of get these more distributed short bursts of news, rather than kind of piling on all these announcements in one place in E3, like I feel like was probably once the way of things, or at least it was more in that direction.
No, definitely. I mean, there's so many more specified avenues to get your information, especially in a 24-hour news cycle that we have now too. I mean, you look at, there's a podcast for everything, including us. Anything you ever want to hear relating to something, there's somebody doing a deep dive on it. There's a subreddit for everything. Not to mention, there's 50 different Twitter profiles covering a lot of the same stuff on each specific platform. There's so many avenues to get news and to get the consumer information you want to get, that it just kind of naturally takes its the importance off of doing live events. And you see it a lot too with hell, even leading up to stuff now, you're seeing leaks, you're seeing these big hype moments that E3 has always leaned into, that when we saw this kind of starting to happen with more Nintendo Direct style state of plays, things like that, where you're seeing more specified digital messages go out, E3 could always lean on, but you have the wow moments, which they still do. There's still big moments that do happen out of E3, like, the Halo Infinite reveal trailer, and from a couple years ago, and big things that come out, like for Sony's event a couple years ago, the Shadow of Colossus remake, that from the ground up remake that Bluepoint did, that really threw a lot of people off, that you weren't expecting that. But as we go on with more of this stuff, with leaks coming out left and right, hell, especially even look at the doxing that was talked about earlier of last year, and I believe it was over 2,000 journalists had all their private information shared. We're talking personal phone numbers, personal home addresses, things of that nature. So it's not to mention that stuff, but on top of that, leaks of actual projects. I mean, hell, every year every time that there's an Assassin's Creed game coming out, or Ubisoft game in general anymore. You're seeing more and more leaks of those coming out and ruining those, quote unquote, ruining those moments. But that hype moment that E3 leans into now, that you don't want to miss our show because we're revealing all the biggest games and all the surprises are here, and you will never know until you see it. But, you know, more and more you're seeing that allure fade away because of these messages, that with leaks and stuff like that happening, hell, now people can just say, you know, oh, we'll Audible and just put out a trailer for it, you know, 2 weeks before that, so we can own the message and still get it out there and not have it ruined for that. And people, it could get lost. Oh, we already knew Elden Ring's trailer was coming and the E3 thing. Well, instead of it getting buried beneath multiple other trailers that day, when it could have been a surprise and lead the discussion coming out of that press conference, you know, people already knew of that. It had their 15 minutes in the spotlight earlier. Well, let's just pull it and, you know, have it 2 weeks earlier than E3 and own that day that it comes out. So I get it. It does suck though. It just sucks kind of talking of E3 this way. But, you know, as a fan and somebody who is now doing content around gaming, in a journalistic approach at times, you know, it does suck. But, you know, I still think it does have its importance at the same time, saying that, just not, it's nowhere near. It's still a rung above the PAXs, and because you're still having the big publishers still commit to that, where even if it isn't at its own, you know, even if they're doing kind of their own things off the actual, you know, LA Convention Center, they're still in the area doing stuff with EA Play and Ubisoft's event and, you know, Bethesda. They're still making their presence at E3 felt and holding press conferences, compared to the PAXs where, yeah, you'll get the, you know, Borderlands 3 was revealed at a PAX, but, you know, you're getting one game comparative to roadmaps for multiple games for the next year, realistically. So there's still an importance. I just don't think it's just dwindling, and it's just, you know, like Bob Dylan said, the times they are a changing type of deal. So kind of next point I wanted to bring up here, all signs are pointing really to Sony holding a similar press event for the PlayStation 5 as it did for the PlayStation 4 when it was first revealed. They brought, you know, you see the system, its functionality, specs, the controller, you know, a few launch games, launch window titles, and normally a surprise or two thrown in there for the quote-unquote hype. And while doing that, though, they still attended E3 that same year. And sure, like we said before, that was 2013. And 7 years is a lifetime in tech in general, but more specifically gaming. But do you think Microsoft would be wise to follow a similar path by, you know, showing the Xbox Series X in a formal event? We've already seen the physical box, you know, in terms of, you know, its reveal trailer, little snippet trailer. But, you know, by actually physically taking a prototype of it out, setting it on a pedestal like Sony did and like Microsoft did too, but right before E3, after Sony got the first crack at everything and they were first to market with it, you know, taking it out there, showing it, physically holding up an actual Xbox Series X at a formal press event, and then turning their focus to E3 where that would be games. Do you think they should follow that path like Sony did to kind of control the market this past generation? Or are they good to just kind of, you know, kick their feet back and wait till, you know, hey, we technically already revealed what the console looks like, you know, digitally, but, you know, hey, more info to come at E3. Like, are they cool to kind of take a breather for a second?
I think complacency is horrible in every, like, facet of your life, whether it be your business, your schooling, whatever, or your work, like whatever it is. I think like complacency is a death sentence, because once you become complacent, you just start to wither away. But I think what they really should think about doing, I do think, you know, with what they've shown as far as what the console looks like and everything, I think that's a great start. But I do think they need to have the actual size of what they think it's going to be at E3. And I would really like to see some Halo Infinite gameplay. because if they don't have infinite gameplay by E3 this year, there's no way that game's launching unless they're trying to keep it the biggest secret ever, like, which would be a disaster. Because you have a lot of old school Halo fans that are looking for certain things out of this game, and if you're not willing to provide us a little taste of what it's going to be, we're not going to buy it. We're not going to buy the new system. We're not going to buy the new game. That's just the way it is. So I think they really need to have the console on display at E3, and they need to have a little. I don't think that consumers should be able to play Halo, but at least have like the script. Like, I don't even care if it's not scripted, but at least have some gameplay to show for it. And I think that'll put a lot of people. It'll get a lot of people excited because, seeing what it looks like, being like, that's kind of ugly. I don't know. That's not going to be enough for you to drive console sales. You need to have it in person so people can get a rough idea. Like, am I going to need to get a new stand? Because there's people that are really serious about their setups. They want the wires managed correctly. They want everything to look, zen, if you will. They want it all to look great. So you need to give these people something to look at, something to touch, something to feel, just to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at as far as what we're getting next, because that's the one thing that Xbox is missing. Like, a successful Halo game is going to do wonders for them. So they really need to do their best and do their due diligence to have something to show for it at this E3. And if they do, I think it'll show a lot. It'll, create a lot more success for them. Their sales numbers will go up, and it'll be an all out good thing for Xbox as a whole. But again, they don't show anything. They don't show any Halo Infinite gameplay. Then you're starting to slide down a slippery slope where you're just hoping that just the name of Halo is going to sell you consoles, and that's not going to do it anymore because it's just not good enough. Halo 5 wasn't good enough that people are looking forward to Infinite. I mean, people are looking forward to Infinite because they're like, guys, Halo Reach, Halo 4, and Halo 5 were so bad. I need something. Please help me. So if they provide something good, and another thing they need to do is they need to come out at E3 to try to win some of the esports support back. They need to come out at E3 and say, we're going to have a 16-player or an 8-player multiplayer match, FFA, Halo Infinite, on System Link, on LAN. There's a legitimate System Link with this console. So all you tournament organizers that are weary because the Xbox One caused so many problems, we snipped that in the butt. Instead of doing a fake LAN like we did with the Xbox One, we learned from our mistakes. We're coming at you with a full LAN setup, just like we had on the 360 and One. And then I think you'll do a lot better that way. But I think we do need to see the console at E3. I don't think they can afford to just sit there and rest on their laurels and think that they did a good enough job with it.
Oh, it's for sure 1,000% going to be at E3. That's not the question. It's more, should we see it beforehand? Do you think we need to see it, at a March event or something to actually give the press a decent look at this system ahead of going into E3, where, maybe more like Sony kind of did, where their E3 that year was, okay, you saw the console now, here's the games, here's everything, here's what you're going to be playing on both your, Xbox One still, as they, did talk about before, and we'll kind of touch on this in a few minutes, that it's not technically going to have any console exclusive games for its first year, because we just want to get everybody into the Xbox ecosystem playing on everything. So everything from a first party standpoint is going to be, at least for about the first year, is going to be cross-gen, where you could pick it up on for Xbox One or for Xbox Series X and just get a more different levels of fidelity with, however you want to play it. If you just want to get into the action, absolutely, you can come and get in, at the Xbox One level with this game. But if you're looking for that high graphical fidelity of 120 frames on 4K or whatever, 4K 60 minimum, we got you covered with an Xbox Series X version. So if you ask me, I think it would be smart to do that. Also, too, I wanted to touch on it. Sorry, I had something stuck in my fucking throat. From what I've heard from a few different sources, which lead me to believe, I feel pretty confident saying this, we're going to see Halo Infinite gameplay before E3, which is good. I agree with you that we need to see not as much of this game as possible, but we really haven't seen all that much. We've seen, 7 minutes of this game? total, and none of it gameplay, all of it being in-engine, which is good. It looks great, fucking looks beautiful, frame rate's sick, especially if it's in-engine running off of hardware that we're going to actually be playing it on that is hopefully console-level hardware. But what it sounds, but we haven't seen any gameplay. We don't know if there's advanced movement. We don't know if if it's traditional Halo style gunplay that we saw in, more of the original trilogy, or if it's a hybrid sort of like Reach, or if it's leaning full into the now 3-4-3 style combat of Halo 5 that we've seen for how long, which doesn't seem to be doing it that way, but fuck, we don't know. We haven't seen the game yet. We've only seen, from what we've seen, the proof of concept almost of what we can expect from this game. It looks to be like it's going to be their almost Breath of the Wild moment where we're going to transform this series. It's going to be this hard-hitting narrative that you're going to want to invest time in with these characters and this world, and we're going to actually dig into this lore that's only been kind of scratched upon for a few years in the actual casual, for the casual gamer playing this game, not somebody who reads the extended lore in the book series or whatnot, which is great, but we haven't seen any gameplay. So I agree with you that I think, from what it sounds like, we're going to see it before E3, and if we're going to see it before E3, it's going to be either at, I don't see it being at a 343, they do their community days or whatever, their community streams. They've showed some information about Infinite on those before, but nothing remotely earth-shattering or anything like that. But I would, if that's the case, it would have to be an Inside Xbox. But more importantly, I think it's going to be some kind of event for Series X to physically say, hey, here's the box, here's what it looks like, see, I'm holding it up, here's the backside of it, which we talked about last week. If we got a goddamn news article about the backside of the Xbox, about its ports, people are ready to get some info, press is ready to get their hands on this thing, like, here it is, fly people out. Microsoft is Scrooge McDuck levels of, cash on hand, so you can fly the people out, yada yada type of thing. So I'm with you. We need to see it before E3 personally. So it'll be interesting. Adam, what do you think? I kind of rolled right into my spiel on it, but I want to hear what you think about this.
To me, I mean, the hardware is kind of inert without the games to really back it up. So I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. I don't know what the success of Sony's press conference was like, just kind of showing off their metal and their plastic.
I think it just gave them like room to breathe, let both those entities breathe of here's the ins and outs of this box that you're going to be putting in your living room for the next half of a decade, almost decade, really now. And I remember they showed a few games, if I remember correctly, but it wasn't E3 level where we're used to Microsoft and Sony being like world premiere, where it gave both entities time to kind of breathe and kind of keep that momentum going of their message of what they're doing with this box, and now this is what you're going to be playing with on that box.
I guess if that's what they need so that they can get their ducks in a row, make sure that the games that they're going to show are going to be good, and hopefully going to like appeal to people to buy systems. If they need to show the system a couple weeks in advance, sure, I guess that might be reasonable.
No, it's just weird because you don't know. It's kind of we're armchair quarterbacking this whole thing. I mean, we don't know what the fuck either.
Welcome to the show,
right? Yeah, welcome to the show. If you're listening to this podcast, that's probably what you're wanting. But it's always one of those things that it's going to be either way you look at it. There's the potential for damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing. That they may do it and it may not work for Microsoft. May do this. What Sony did last time around that won them so much of their market share this generation and their really hot start, but it just may not work. I mean, the times are changing. It may be people are just sewn in saying, hey, I'm sticking. I was with PlayStation this whole last generation. I was completely satisfied with my purchase. Microsoft burned me out the gate. I'm sticking with them at least for a while. I'm not full on in. If I want to play Xbox games, I'll go buy an Xbox One if I'm supposedly still able to play these games right now. All the games that are going to come out for the next year or so. So it's interesting. You really don't know what to do because this is, I think, a wholly new situation that we haven't seen in modern gaming yet. But so let's kind of shift gears a bit to games, but kind of still in line with messaging here. What do you guys think of Microsoft's approach to the games like we're talking about on Xbox Series X in terms of there being no true exclusives to the console for the first year? Kind of what I mentioned earlier in the last part we kind of talked about. So if you missed this, Matt Booty, head of Microsoft Studios, stated that for the first year of its life cycle, the Xbox Series X will not have any quote-unquote true console exclusives, as the first-party titles that they do drop for the system will also be cross-gen releases with the Xbox One family of systems. Does this make buying the system less promising at launch, or does this continue to play into their messaging of Xbox by wanting gamers just to be in their ecosystem no matter at what level? We have a home for you in this ecosystem, whether you want to come in at the base entry level of Xbox One, Xbox One S, X, whatever, or you want to go balls deep with us and you want to get our premium product that we're putting out with Xbox Series X.
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I think it's consistent with their messaging that they want you to be playing their games no matter how that is, whether you're coming in on PC, playing on Game Pass, buying physical, buying digital, previous generation, current generation. It is a little bit worrying that their first kind of several releases might be cutting into their sales. Usually the console's real peak is like right on launch or the first holiday season after launch, when you might get your first deep discount, you might get your first really sweet bundle deal. So I don't know, they might be shooting themselves in the foot a little bit with this, but we'll have to see how it plays out. It might be that some people are just really interested in getting the new series. They don't mind so much if they could have had, the new set of launch titles on their current system. Maybe they really want them on the next one. I know this really doesn't apply to me because I intend to get back into Xbox next generation because I missed out on this one. I don't have a One X or a One S. I didn't buy into Xbox this gen.
Outside of Game Pass on PC and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true. I do have Game Pass.
But
yeah, I think there's a potential for it to cut into their first set of sales, but everyone who wanted to buy that Series X is eventually going to, I'm sure. So,
oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. Mike, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, as far as exclusives or lack thereof is concerned, I think.
What do you really think? Tell me what you really think.
This feels like a direct attack on Sony and their lack of having backwards compatibility. So it feels like they're saying, Sony doesn't let you play all your old games. You have to have all those old systems. Well, guess what? If you get this new system, all your backwards compatibility is going to work. Or you can keep with the Xbox One X, you might lose, or the Xbox One, you might lose some backwards compatibility with older games, but if you get the new system, everything, it's going to work all the time. Your old games from Xbox, the original Xbox 360, all that stuff's going to work on this brand new console. So if you've been with us from day one, you're going to be able to play everything that you used to love about Xbox on the new console. Obviously, no internet capabilities that we've heard of or anything of that nature, because I think playing Halo 2 or Halo 1 online again, the true Halo 2, the Xbox Halo 2 would just be wild. It's never going to happen, but I think it's great for Xbox, and I do think it kind of aligns with their mentality of like, hey, we just want you to play our system. I think if that's the message that they're sending home, I think that this action and these moves that they're making and kind of jockeying for position coming into the next generation, I think that everything that they're saying and doing is kind of lining up to match. It doesn't feel like they're misleading anybody or they're being dishonest, if you will. It definitely feels like they're gonna deliver on their promises here with, if you just want to play Xbox, if that's what you're looking to do, we're going to help you get there. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I agree with both you guys. I think it aligns right into their message that they're trying to say, hey, we don't, and at the end of the day, it's just a grasp at getting more goodwill. I mean, because they got their asses whooped this past generation. I mean,
They sure did.
yeah, there's a reason why that Xbox doesn't release sales numbers on their consoles, because they're not very high comparative to not only the PlayStation 4 now, but also the Switch, and there's a reason. So they're just continuing to fight this uphill battle, and they've done it in a way that's almost similar to like a No Man's Sky, where it's that game released and it overpromised and underdelivered on a lot of things, and all that Sean Murray did was him and the rest of Hello Games closed their mouth, put their head down, took the beating that they got from the fan base saying, what the fuck is this shit? And but they put their head down, they took it, and they went to work and they fixed it. And that's what you saw. They played the long game, kind of like what Microsoft's at least alluding to what they're doing now. You could see it, that they're just wanting to get people into their ecosystem, and they're investing in new studios, and they're investing in AAA quality, and like we talked about last week, quadruple A now, quality games of these almost blank check games of, hey, we want to compete with the God of Wars, we want to compete with The Last of Us, we want to compete with these exclusives that you're seeing. And it's great that I agree with Adam that it could hurt their bottom line of, we want, why should I go out and buy an Xbox Series X if I'm able to play it on my Xbox One X right now, or my Xbox One S or whatever? For at least the first year, I can get another year out of this. But I think them also leaning into and being so closely connected with PC players that market will say, they're like, well, I do want to play the new Halo, and I'm so used to playing it with a controller. Hell, I'll play it on console. I got to get the Series X though. I want to play it at 4K 60 or 1080 120 or whatever. So I just think it just continues to lean into their messaging no matter what with it. But let's head into kind of one of the last things I want to talk about real quick. So while Microsoft soft brands themselves at being at E3, that's technically not true. They hold their own event really now at the Microsoft Theater that they own. It's a theater that they own. That's a few blocks from the LA Convention Center where the actual expo is held. They do all their demos and whatnot in there now. They don't go to, the what is it, Hall H or whatever that's at the LA Convention Center. They don't go and set up a booth there, where you used to see Sony and Xbox right across from each other really pushing both of their products. Now you see all of that done out at the Microsoft Theater, that you see a lot of press members complaining about them having to run out there and go do that and then drive back for appointments that they have at the actual convention center. So with Sony now not attending the show and kind of leaving the door open for Microsoft to own that message of that, does that make it an easy slam dunk for Xbox to go in there, and even if Sony does come out and say, hey, here's our first look at Xbox, and, they say, hey, here's what we got. Now it's kind of roles reversed of last generation, where Microsoft, they kind of had the first word at doing stuff on their system, and Sony was able to come in and kind of slam dunk on them. Do you kind of see that being roles reversed this time around, or would they be wise to focus on branding themselves almost bigger than E3, similar to how Sony is now, and just brand their own event outside of E3 and just kind of do what Sony is doing and move away from E3? Do you think Microsoft may be the next pillar to do that?
I can see the benefits of them following Sony's suit and just kind of, fucking off and making their own expo, or not expo,
for lack of better words,
but
Fuck
press
off.
conference.
Fuck off, I got work to do.
Exactly. But apropos of that, let's say that they do stay on E3.
Mm-hmm.
One benefit to that is they're the biggest fish in the pond. They can only benefit from everyone else who remains at E3 because they're still the biggest fish. Any attention that comes to individual publishers or developers who stay on at E3 will also tend to bleed back up to them as the sole console manufacturer still at the show. That's just one factor in favor of them staying and not trying to brand themselves as being like bigger or above E3, but just, still being the spear point, I guess.
Mike, what are you thinking, man?
I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's kind of concerning that Sony and other companies have kind of started to peel away. But I'm faithful that Xbox will kind of hang around with E3 because it's almost like Xbox is like, yeah, we had a really bad generation, and I think they would want to like stay loyal to E3 if that's like even a thing. They would almost want to like stay there because PlayStation's not there. So it's like if they are basically just trying to be like the anti-PlayStation, which it seems like that's kind of what their marketing is. I mean, they're not coming out and saying, to hell with PlayStation. We are looking to completely and totally, like be everything that they're not, if you will. I think, if they were to leave E3 just like PlayStation, people would kind of have that like, well, you're no better. You did the exact same thing they did. They ditched, So I think that that's kind of where Microsoft's at. They're kind of like in a situation where they don't really want to be one of the bad guys. So I do think, overall, I think you could anticipate like a situation where I wouldn't think that Xbox would leave. But again, I can't say for certain because I'm not in their war room and I'm not the one making decisions. They are at the end of the day. So it's completely up to them, but I don't foresee Xbox, leaving E3. At least maybe that's me being hopeful. Maybe that's me being naive, if you will. Just being like, yeah, they're not going to leave. There's no way they'll leave. But, you never know. They could.
Yeah, you never know. That's like we kind of talked about today, where it's been... The times are changing, and it's hard to see what E3 is going to be in... Like I said, by the end of this generation, but hell, even by some regards, next year. It's so hard to tell just with how much the gaming landscape is changing. Not only, you got to think about it. Think of, 10 years ago, really in 2010, you were looking at E3 being really at probably one of its peaks almost, or getting damn near close to it. GameStop being one of the biggest video game retailers out there, if not the biggest, and now looking at it being on the ropes from not closing. I mean, hell, I just saw a thing that popped up that, or a news article earlier today that it came out that their holiday sales for this past year were down another 25% from last year. So, like, the whole gaming landscape is just changing to a digital front in a lot of regards, including not only storefronts, but messaging. It's all going really for the messaging that it's so much easier to just ping somebody saying, hey, we're live and we're about to make a discussion, or we're about to make a reveal or an announcement. Come in and hang out with us and let's talk about it, compared to, all right, well, it's going to be next week and we're going to fly everyone out and we're going to pay about $3 million to set up and rent out this convention center or this auditorium style place or a theater. It's just so much easier to do that. And I think at the end of the day, though, it could also, in a positive way, be looked at as, well, that's money we're saving that could go back into either our first-party studio devs or, towards being able to provide something more for our customers at the end of the day. So I like to look at the glass half full, but that usually fucks me at the end of the day. So let's kind of wrap it up here, guys. Just, gut reaction or your gut guess. Which do we physically see first? Do we see the, like, actually somebody holding up the box saying this is it for the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, and who blows their load first on price point? Who says this is how much it is first? Sony or Microsoft?
Oh,
do you want me to go first?
I'm gonna say, you know what? I want to go first. I'll go first. I think Sony will give their price first because I think Sony will give its price first because I think in their mindset they're going to they probably do know how much Series X is going to be. I'm sure somebody knows, but nowhere near confirmed. But they want to get ahead of that messaging because from what it sounds like, granted, we don't know anything official, but from a lot of really trusted sources, like we've talked about before on the show with Digital Foundry and whatnot, that it sounds like the Series X is going to be a much more powerful system, a 3, almost 4 teraflop jump in power and performance, that I think they're going to get out ahead of this and say, well, if that's the case, we got to own the message on price. We're the best value for gamers to come out here, even though with Game Pass, whatever, up front, we're going to be $400 again or something like that. I think they come out first and say, own that message of Sony says we're going to be the easiest way to get in from a price point and we're cheaper or whatever. But I think that possibly could come first. I don't know for sure. I don't know when we see it. I don't know if that's like an E3 thing or what, but I think they're first to actually say how much it is. I think with how much though we've been hearing about the fucking back of the Xbox Series X, how much we're fucking talking about it, I think Xbox is the one who physically holds up, hey, here it is. Here's the Xbox Series X, and they're the first to show it. So Microsoft first to actually show the thing, Sony first to own the messaging in price point. Boom.
I kind of probably like in your exact same basically everything you said is pretty much how I feel about it, because like you said, they're going to be showing it before E3, or at least that's what people believe. So if they're going to be showing it relatively soon, I would imagine that obviously we're going to be able to see that one first. The PlayStation 5, we haven't really heard a ton about it.
Yeah.
So I would think that PlayStation 5 is the only pillar they would have to stand on, is giving a price point versus actually showing the console. So I'm definitely there with you. I'm in agreement with you, and I think that's probably the exact situation that's going to play out.
Adam, let's hear it, man. What's your gut say?
I'm breaking the mold. I believe that
the bad boy GPGC.
I believe Sony will show first.
Okay.
But I think, to be quite honest, Sony and Microsoft have agreed to release at the same price.
Ooh.
That's my guess. I have nothing to substantiate that claim. A little bit
of the devil's handshake there.
This is a gut feeling.
There's no support to my claim.
Absolutely none.
I'm just making it.
Yep.
It's happened kind of before. I don't want to dwell on it long, but I can't see them both, one being drastically more than the other. We're talking $200 or $300 more than the other.
Right.
PS3 style, where it's comes out and they're it's gonna be you can get in at $700, and people are the fuck I will.
Right.
So
there's this you kind of get into some game theory, and I mean game theory is in the mathematical field of study of what is the best way for me to gain over my opponent in this kind of situation. You could have a whole breakdown of what each company could do if they had a price point in mind, how they could start high and then cut low, try to undercut the other company to get better sales because they think that maybe a cheaper system would sell better. I think that at this point in their lives, being such mature console manufacturers and competitors, and kind of being amicable with each other in recent years, I think it just makes more sense for them to agree on a price, to say, okay, we're both making our systems. They cost whatever they cost, but we are both going to earn the same amount per system. Because if one was cheaper to make, they could be making a higher margin. If the other one was more expensive to make, they could be competing at their competitor's price. Even if they're losing out on margin, they might be doing better on volume because they're at the same price. They're not being undercut.
Yeah.
They might both just be banking on their audience and their customer base just supporting them on the basis of quality. On hey, we're pushing our games. We believe that they're going to be our games and our performance and features are going to be what sell this console, not a price point, not prestige or marketing ploy like that. It's just going to be, which one do you think is better? Which one do you want more?
Mm-hmm. No, I could see it, man. I could definitely. I don't think that's a crazy theory to throw out there. So,
still no evidence to support it though. So we'll see how things shake out.
No, yeah, time will tell, guys. I think that's it. That's our show for this week. So let's tell everyone where they can find you and talk about video games, and probably tell us, well, you guys are fucking wrong. So Adam, where can people yell at you on the internet at?
You can find me on Twitter at AC_Marshy. That's at AC_MARSHY.
And Mike, where can people boo you at online?
You can find me at TOYSXLDIER on Twitter or MP_Toy Soldier on Twitch.
And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travis on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Traveless_. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And you can play some video games with me over on Xbox Live at just regular Traveless, TRAVLESS, no underscore. And, ladies and gentlemen, that has been a new episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox and Xbox Game Pass, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. New episodes of the show drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us wherever you get a podcast and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our giveaways, like our free game giveaway, which, remember, next week's show, we're pulling that, so make sure you get your ass on our social media platform and follow us and retweet it, you dig? So, guys, that's our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. And game on and play them fucking video games, and we will see you next week.